A blackboard killed me. I woke in another world beneath a crystal that called my soul empty. Pale light moved inside the blue crystal. Then it vanished. 639 applicants watched from the marble seats of the examination hall. For one quiet second, nobody breathed. Then Felix laughed. He sat beside his father, Benson, the richest sponsor of Greystone Academy. Felix wore a red coat, gold boots, and the smile of a man who had never opened a door for himself. "Zero resonance," he said. "Even a chair has more magic." The hall filled with laughter. My hands were younger than I remembered. My bronze nameplate said Nico. My last memory was a loose school blackboard, a cracked wall, and 2 metal screws losing an argument with gravity. Now a magic crystal was insulting me in public. It was an efficient introduction to my second life. Galen, the man conducting the examination, tapped the crystal with a silver rod. He tried again. The result remained empty. "Candidate Nico," he announced, loud enough for every recording crystal in the hall, "has no measurable mana resonance. His provisional scholarship is cancelled. His place in the central residence is withdrawn." A clerk tore my 2 blue scholarship cards in half. That happened before I had performed a single spell. I did not argue. A man who had just died under school furniture needed information more than pride. "Do I still take the ability test?" I asked. Galen frowned. I had not given him tears. "The Academy is required to test every living candidate," he said. Felix leaned toward his father. "That rule is very generous with the word living." Laughter rolled through the seats. Other applicants received polished wands and crystals. A girl touched a glass sphere and summoned a bird made of water. The crowd applauded. When my turn came, the tool chest was empty. Galen searched it slowly. His fingers passed over several spare wands. Then he reached beneath the table and produced a short piece of white chalk. It was no longer than my little finger. "A suitable focus," he said. Benson covered a smile with one jeweled hand. Felix did not bother. I took it. The moment it touched my skin, I felt 12 small points of warmth behind my ribs. Not much, but 0 and 12 were different numbers. An instinct entered my mind. I crouched and drew a circle on the dark testing stone. The line was rough, but it closed. White light rose from it. A small round shield formed above the floor. It was solid, bright, and almost as wide as my chest. The laughter stopped. I had enough time to touch the shield. It felt like cool stone. Then Galen stepped forward and dragged his silver boot across the circle. The chalk line broke. The shield vanished after 1 second. "Unstable manifestation," he declared at once. "F rank, no practical value." He ground the remaining line beneath his heel. The crowd laughed again. For 1 second, they had feared the empty candidate might be interesting. Galen pointed at the ranking wall. My name appeared at the bottom. 640th. Felix rose and applauded by himself. The sound was slow and sharp. "A historic result," he said. "Last place before lunch." I looked at the white dust on Galen's boot. The shield had been real. That fact mattered more than his voice. I left the circle without bowing. The girl who had summoned the water bird moved aside. Her nameplate said, "Ava." "You should appeal," she whispered. "To whom?" She looked at Galen and Benson. Her answer died before it reached her mouth. "Exactly," I said. Ava hurried back to the testing circle, recovered the chalk from beneath Galen's table, and placed it in my palm. "You made something," she said. "I saw it." She was the first person in that world who spoke as if I had not disappeared. I closed my fingers around the chalk. So did I. The cancelled scholarship left me 8 copper coins and a room in the forgotten North Annex. One window was boarded. The roof displayed 3 failed repairs. Hugo, the keeper, sat outside peeling potatoes with a knife large enough to settle arguments. He looked at my gray uniform, then at the broken scholarship card. "Room 9, he said. "Top floor. The stair rail bites. Do not trust it." "Does the room have a bed?" "It has an object with the ambition to become a bed." I liked him. Room 9 contained a narrow mattress, a table with one short leg, and a window facing a brick wall. I placed the 6 centimeter piece of chalk on the table. No voice explained it, so I tested it like a broken machine. One line did nothing, 2 lines did nothing. A closed triangle changed everything. White light flashed, a solid wedge rose from the wood. It stayed for 10 seconds. I counted every one. When it vanished, warmth left my chest. I knew without being told that I had spent 3 units of mana. The 3 sides together measured almost 3 meters in the magic's strange internal scale, although the drawing itself fit in my palm. The system cared about the length of the real object, not the tiny drawing. That was inconvenient, but honest. At midnight, the answer finally arrived. A cold voice spoke inside my head. It did not produce a glowing window. It simply named 3 paths: Living Artist, Rune Knight, Field Architect. The first path favored moving images. The second favored weapons and armor. The third favored structures, connected lines, and control of space. I chose Field Architect. The voice gave me one rule. Any closed drawing made with chalk could become a real magical object for 10 seconds. 1 meter of manifested line cost 1 unit of mana. I could maintain 3 figures at the same time. That was all. No legendary sword or dragon blood. I had chalk and the power to make geometry angry. My maximum mana was 12. I tested the rule until dawn. A circle became a round shield. A long rectangle became a low wall. A triangle became a step. When I tried a 4th figure, the first vanished at once. When I left a gap as thin as a hair, nothing happened. When I closed it, the object appeared. Every object lasted exactly 10 seconds. That sounded short until I remembered the falling blackboard. 10 seconds could be generous. My mana returned at 1 unit every 5 minutes. The chalk did not return. By sunrise, only a white chip remained between my fingers. I also repaired the table leg for 10 seconds. It was probably a local record. A knock came at the door. Ava stood outside with a covered bowl, a loaf of brown bread, and a ruler tucked beneath one arm. "You missed breakfast," she said. "Your meal card was canceled." That was fast. Greystone is slow with repairs and fast with punishment. She entered, saw the chalk diagrams covering the table, and stopped. "You kept trying." The shield existed. Galen only proved that shoes can defeat unfinished research. I lifted the cover from the bowl. Steam touched my face. Thick meat stew filled the room with the smell of onions, pepper, carrots, and roasted beef. A layer of golden fat shone on top. The bread was still warm. Its crust cracked beneath my thumb. For the first time since dying, I felt my body remember that it was alive. I ate 1 spoonful. The beef fell apart without effort. The broth was salty and rich. "This is excellent," I said. Ava watched me with concern. "You sound surprised." My last meal was soup from a machine. It tasted like a wet envelope. She decided not to ask. While I ate, she measured the room. Ava studied magical cartography and remembered any distance she saw once. "Show me," she said. I recovered enough mana for 1 test. On the floor, I drew a square with 4 equal sides. I intended a stool. The line closed and a white block rose to my knee. Ava stared. "Sit," I said. "It will vanish." In 10 seconds. That is not comforting. It is more warning than most chairs give. She sat carefully. At 10, the block vanished and dropped her onto the floor. Then she laughed so hard she had to cover her mouth. Hugo appeared in the open doorway with his potato knife. "I heard a fall." "The furniture expired," Ava said. Hugo looked at the chalk square and then at me. "Can you make a roof?" For 10 seconds. Better than the current one. By noon, we understood more than Galen had learned from his crystal. A circle could become a shield or cylinder, but not a horse. A rectangle could become a wall, platform, or box. Simple intent produced stronger objects. My worst ability rewarded planning. That made it dangerous. Before lunch, students said I had summoned a chair. An hour later, it was a white throne, and I had declared myself king of the North Annex. Rumors cost no mana and lasted longer than 10 seconds. Felix arrived that afternoon. He brought 4 friends, a challenge clerk, and almost 200 students who wanted to see the last-ranked applicant sit on his legendary chair. The courtyard filled with uniforms. Students leaned from windows. 2 recording crystals floated above the fountain. Felix walked into the center and looked at the damaged building. I knew they put F ranks somewhere, he said. I did not know the academy kept a ruin for them. Hugo continued peeling a potato. The ruin was peaceful before you arrived. Several students laughed. Felix's smile tightened. He held up a bronze challenge token. Nico, you embarrassed an examiner by spreading a false rumor about your ability. I challenge you to a ranked duel. If you refuse, the academy removes you from the applicant list. If you accept, the winner takes the higher rank and 5 gold coins. 5 gold was more money than I had seen in my second life. The rank attached to Felix's coat was 318th. I looked at the clerk. Is that rule correct? The clerk nodded. A ranked student may challenge an unplaced or F-ranked student once. Refusal counts as withdrawal. Felix had not come because he was bored. His father had promised a new training hall if Felix entered the top 300 before the first monthly review. Beating the last student was supposed to move him closer without risk. Everyone in the courtyard knew it. He needed me to remain weak for financial reasons. I respected the clarity. I accept, I said. Ava caught my sleeve. You have 1 small piece of chalk. I know. He has 40 units of mana. I know. His fire spell can melt iron. That part is new. Felix entered the practice ring. He removed his gold coat and handed it to a servant. Under it, he wore another gold coat. Some people prepared for battle like a refrigerator with anger problems. Felix prepared like a curtain shop. I entered with the chalk chip in my right hand. The clerk explained the rules. No killing. No attacks after surrender. Leaving the ring meant defeat. The recording crystals would verify the result. The bell rang. Felix raised one hand. A ball of flame formed above his palm. You should have refused, he said. You should have worn less fabric. He threw the fireball. I crouched and drew a circle on the stone. The line required 4 units of mana. A white shield rose just before the flame struck. Fire rolled around it. The students nearest the ring stepped back. The shield remained for 3 seconds. Felix stared. Galen had erased my first shield after 1 second. Nobody else knew it could last 10. At the 6th second, I moved. I ran left, dragging the chalk across the floor. Felix formed a second fireball and aimed ahead of me. He was trained. His arrogance had not made him stupid. I closed a narrow rectangle. A white wall appeared at an angle. His second fireball hit it and turned toward the fountain. The fountain exploded upward. Felix's friends received a sudden bath. One kept cheering until he noticed his hair was on fire. The courtyard roared. I had used 8 mana. 4 remained. Felix understood that number. He smiled again. 2 tricks, he said. Now you are empty. He rushed at me with fire wrapped around both fists. He was right about my mana and wrong about the line I needed. The practice ring already contained a large square made from 4 dark stone seams. One corner had broken over the years. A gap the length of my forearm separated 2 stones. I did not yet know whether an existing edge could complete my magic, but I had measured the gap while Felix was removing his first coat. I dropped beside the broken corner and drew one short white line. The old square closed. My last 4 mana vanished, and white bars erupted around Felix. He ran directly into them. The sound was not heroic. It was the sound of an expensive spoon hitting a cooking pot. Felix bounced backward and landed inside the cage. His burning fists struck the bars. The fire spread across them but did not break them. The courtyard fell silent. Then one student began counting. More voices joined. At 5, Felix tried to climb. The roof of the cage pushed him down. At 7, his second gold coat caught fire at the sleeve. At 8, he shouted his surrender. The clerk raised my hand before the cage vanished. 200 witnesses screamed at once. The ranking wall changed. Felix fell to the bottom, while I rose from 640th to 318th. The floating recording crystals repeated the moment he had hit the bars. Students laughed harder each time. Felix stood in the wet ring with one smoking sleeve. He looked less like an heir and more like a roasted chicken that had received bad news. I picked up the bronze purse containing 5 gold coins. A warm pulse moved through my chest. My field architect class had grown from the public victory. My maximum mana rose from 12 to 18. Power, money, and rank. All three numbers had changed in less than 10 seconds. Galen arrived after the cheering had already begun. He pushed through the crowd, saw Felix's burned coat, and looked up at the recording crystals. "This duel was not authorized," he said. The challenge clerk held up the signed token. "It was authorized under your examination rules." Students turned toward Galen. He saw the problem. If he denied the duel, he denied his own rules. If he accepted it, the F rank he had announced had defeated the sponsor's son in public. His face became the color of old milk. "There will be a formal retest tomorrow," he said. "A real test." I put the 5 gold coins into my pocket. "Will there be real chalk?" Someone near the fountain laughed. Then everyone did. Galen left while the courtyard chanted my new rank. That evening, Hugo added beef to the remaining stew. Ava cut the warm bread into thick pieces and spread butter over them until it melted into the crust. Hugo roasted potatoes with salt and onions in a black pan. Their edges were crisp, their centers were soft enough to break with a spoon. We ate at the repaired table. I used folded wood beneath the short leg. Permanent solutions still had value. Outside, students continued visiting the old practice ring. Every few minutes, someone struck the stone and shouted Felix's name. The laughter reached our window. Ava placed my recovered chalk chip beside my bowl. "You have almost none left," she said. I placed 1 gold coin on the table. "Tomorrow I buy enough to make that Galen's problem." Hugo lifted his cup. "To educational supplies." We drank hot tea with honey. For a short time, the room felt warmer than any palace I could imagine. Then a thin white line appeared beneath the table. None of us had drawn it. It moved across the floor by itself, passed under Ava's boot, and stopped at the wall. Far below the north annex, something answered with a single heavy pulse. The bowls trembled. In the central tower, the ranking bell began to ring again. This time, it was not announcing a student. It was announcing a forbidden class. The forbidden bell rang 13 times. By the 4th ring, students had gathered outside the north annex. By the 8th, 3 academy guards stood in our kitchen. By the 13th, my stew was cold. I considered that the first crime of the day. The guards did not arrest me. They stared at the line beneath the table and waited for someone important to make a decision. That person arrived in a gray robe and soft black gloves. He was thin, white-haired, and carried a leather case full of rolled maps. "Roth," he introduced himself. "I preserve the Foundation plans." He crouched beside the line without touching it. His eyes moved from the floor to my chalk chip. "Did you draw this?" "No." "Did it appear after you used your class?" "Yes." Roth smiled as if I had confirmed the weather. "Old buildings settle. Old enchantments sometimes leak." He placed a black cloth over the line. When he removed it, the white mark was gone. The pulse beneath the floor stopped. Ava watched his hands. "What enchantment was it?" "A dead one." Roth rolled his maps and left. The guards followed him. Nobody explained why a dead enchantment needed 3 armed men. Hugo tasted the cold stew. "The potatoes survived," he said. I looked at the clean floor. The line did not. At sunrise, a red notice appeared on every academy board. My formal retest would begin at the 3rd bell in the central practice hall. Failure meant immediate expulsion. Success meant my rank would remain under review. Galen had written both choices so that he still won. Below the notice, someone had drawn Felix inside a square cage. A second student had added smoke to his sleeve. A third had written my rank in letters twice the size of Galen's name. The academy had 640 new students. By breakfast, at least 500 claimed to have witnessed my duel. The courtyard vendors reacted faster than the teachers. They sold white candy bars called Nico's Chalk and small wooden cages called Felix boxes. One child trapped a sausage in a Felix box and charged 2 copper coins to watch it escape. Felix crossed the courtyard while that happened. His replacement coat was plain black. The child offered him a discount. I continued to the supply shop before Felix could decide whether attacking a sausage was legal. Ordinary chalk cost 1 copper per piece. Water-resistant rune chalk cost 2 silver. I bought 10 pieces for 2 gold, along with a ruler, cord, and a small slate board. 3 gold remained in my purse. Ava studied the receipt. You spent almost half your money on chalk. A swordsman spends more on a sword. A sword lasts longer than 10 seconds. A sword cannot become a staircase. She accepted that. We used the hour before the retest in an empty laundry yard. My mana had recovered to 18. I drew a rectangle but left one corner open. Nothing happened. No mana moved. No 10-second count began. I waited 5 minutes. The open line remained harmless. Then I closed the final gap with a mark shorter than my thumb. A white wall rose at once. The magic charged me for the whole manifested shape, but it did not care when the other lines had been drawn. That changed the value of preparation. With 12 units of mana, I had been forced to draw while an enemy attacked. With 10 minutes and an open plan, I could prepare an entire battlefield and activate it with one movement. Ava walked around the wall. Galen will erase the lines before the test. Only if he understands them. I filled the slate with open triangles, circles, and rectangles. They looked like the work of a child who hated corners. Ava understood after I showed her the activation points. These are not drawings, she said. Not yet. They are loaded traps. That sounds more respectable. The central practice hall had seating for 1,000. Every place was full. Students stood in the aisles. Teachers occupied a raised platform. Benson sat beside Galen with his hands folded over a gold cane. Felix remained behind them, wearing the expression of a man attending his own second funeral. 4 recording crystals floated over the course. The ranking wall waited above the finish gate. The course contained a broken bridge, a field of falling stone blocks, a rotating wall, and 3 wooden combat golems. A normal first-year retest used 1 golem. Galen had placed 3 and painted the Academy seal over their control plates. Candidate Nico will demonstrate whether his unstable trick has any academic value, Galen announced. The crowd answered with the sound of hundreds of chalk pieces striking wood. Students had brought their own. Galen's jaw tightened. The required score is 300 points, he continued. A murmur moved through the teachers. Ava had told me the normal passing score was 100. Is that number the same for every applicant? I asked. Your class has been identified as potentially forbidden. Additional proof is necessary. So it is not the same. Do you withdraw? No. I wanted the witnesses to hear you. The recording crystals turned toward Galen. Laughter moved through the seats. He gave me 10 minutes of preparation because the written rules required it. I walked the course with my cord and ruler. On the starting platform, I drew an open 5-meter rectangle. Near the falling blocks, I drew an open 6-meter wedge. Around the golem gate, I drew 7 meters of an unfinished cage. The 3 shapes required all 18 units once active. Galen watched me cover the stone with incomplete lines. You failed to close any spell, he said for the benefit of the crystals. I am saving that part. At the 9th minute, hidden nozzles opened in the walls. Water sprayed across the course. Students shouted. The preparation period had not ended. Galen had activated the cleaning enchantment early. The water struck my lines. It rolled over them. The water-resistant chalk held. Galen looked at the 10 pieces tied to my belt. 2 gold had purchased more than chalk. It had purchased the expression on his face. The first recording crystal moved closer to him. A maintenance error, he said. Of course, I replied. The starting bell rang. I touched the first missing corner. The 5-meter rectangle closed. A white platform formed over the broken bridge. I ran across while the official bridge remained folded beneath it. The audience counted. At 9 seconds, I jumped from the far end. At 10, the platform vanished behind my heels. The first score crystal flashed 50 points. The falling blocks began before I reached their marked trigger line. Another maintenance error. 3 stones the size of carts dropped from the ceiling. I slid beside the open wedge and closed its final corner. 6 mana left me. A sloping white wall rose above my back. The first stone struck it and rolled sideways. It hit the rotating wall, broke one of its arms, and sent a padded beam spinning toward Galen's platform. Galen ducked. Benson did not. The beam knocked his gold hat into the first row. The hall produced a single enormous laugh. Benson stood without his hat, looking almost human. I crossed the falling field. The score rose to 140. The three golems activated together. Their wooden bodies were twice my height. Iron training clubs turned in their hands. Red light burned behind their painted faces. The first charged. I had 7 mana left, exactly enough for the open cage. Galen knew it. He smiled. Then the damaged rotating wall crashed into the rear golem. Its control plate shattered. The score crystal awarded 20 points for an environmental defeat. I ran between the remaining golems. Their clubs followed me. One struck the other across the face. The sound resembled 2 wardrobes arguing on a staircase. I reached the gate and completed the cage. White bars rose around both golems. They swung at me from opposite sides. Their clubs struck the bars, bounced back, and hit their own heads. The crowd counted the 10 seconds again. By the 6th second, both golems had broken themselves. The score jumped from 160 to 320. I crossed the finish gate in 27 seconds. For half a breath, the hall remained quiet. Then the ranking wall flashed gold. It announced a new first-year course record. Students surged to their feet. White chalk rained from the upper seats. It struck the floor, the benches, and Galen's silver boots. My final score rose again. I had preserved all 3 academy obstacles rather than destroying them myself. The course granted a 20-point control bonus, 340. 40 points above Galen's special demand, 240 above the normal passing score. The public ranking changed. My name left 318th place and stopped at 96th. Felix stared up at it. His own name remained at the bottom. "The test is invalid," Galen shouted. His voice disappeared beneath the cheering. He seized the course control plate and tried to clear the settings. One recording crystal dropped in front of his hand. The plate spoke before he could touch it. It announced that the course had been set to 4th-year difficulty by examiner Galen 7 minutes before the test. The cheering changed. It became anger. Teachers stood. Students shouted for the result to be reviewed. Someone in the upper row threw a Felix box. It landed over Galen's silver rod. Galen stepped backward into a bag of powdered chalk used for field markings. The bag burst. White dust covered him from his boots to his hair. He stood on the platform like an angry flour sack. The recording crystals moved around him from 3 directions. That was when Cedric arrived. He was the head of Greystone's combat department, a broad man with a scar across his jaw. The audience quieted because even sponsors lowered their voices around him. Cedric inspected the control plate. He watched the recordings of the early water spray, the falling blocks, and the 3 golems. His face revealed nothing. "Examiner Galen," he said, "read the verified result." Galen wiped chalk from his mouth. "The test must be reviewed. It has been recorded by 4 academy crystals. Read it." Every student waited. Galen looked at Benson. The sponsor turned away. Keeping the lie was now more expensive than abandoning the man who told it. Galen faced the hall. "Nico achieved 340 points, he said. "Louder," someone called. The crowd laughed. Galen's hands shook. "He passed. His original F-rank assessment is suspended." "And the course record?" I asked. His eyes found mine through the chalk dust. "First place," he said. The hall exploded again. Galen had erased my shield before 639 witnesses. Now he corrected himself before 1,000. The Academy treasurer brought me 14 gold coins. 10 were the official record reward. 4 were compensation for improper testing. Added to the 3 remaining in my purse, I owned 17 gold. The field architect class rewarded the record and the public proof. My maximum mana rose from 18 to 36. My power doubled. My money more than tripled. My name entered the top 100 before my second lunch. The students did not let Galen leave quietly. As he crossed the hall, they tapped chalk against the benches in a slow rhythm. Each tap sounded like a small hammer striking his reputation. Outside, the vendors changed their signs. Nico's chalk doubled in price. Felix boxes were now sold with tiny white Galen figures covered in flour. Felix found me near the steps. His burned hand was bandaged. His voice was low enough that the crowd could not hear. "My father told Galen to fail you," he said. I guessed. Galen agreed because he wanted the new testing hall contract. Why tell me? Felix looked at a group of children putting sausages in wooden cages. Because my father says tomorrow will fix everything. He walked away before I could ask what that meant. That evening, the North Annex smelled of butter and fried onions. Hugo cooked 6 eggs in a wide pan, folded soft cheese through them, and added sliced tomatoes until their juice mixed with the butter. Ava toasted bread over the stove. She covered it with apple preserve that tasted sweet, sharp, and warm. We ate in the kitchen because our table had become famous and 3 students were outside asking to rent it. Ava spread a copy of the Academy map beside her plate. Your line from last night followed this wall, she said. But the official foundation plan says there is no enchantment beneath us. Roth called it dead. Roth also removed it without a spell. Hugo poured honey tea into 3 cups. Roth has kept the old maps for 20 years. He knows every stone below the campus. Can we see those maps? I asked. Ava shook her head. The lower archive is restricted. I broke a piece of toast. Cheese stretched from the eggs in long golden threads. Then we begin with the walls we can measure. Ava smiled. You really think every problem is a floor plan? Not every problem. Galen was more like a stain. She laughed into her tea. For a few minutes, we forgot the forbidden bell. Hugo told us how the annex roof once fell into a teacher's bath. Ava drew a crown on a boiled tomato. I used a tiny chalk circle to give it a white plate for 10 seconds. When the plate vanished, the tomato rolled into Hugo's cup. It was a good evening. Then every notice board outside turned red. Students ran across the courtyard. Voices rose beneath our window. Ava returned with the new order in her hand. Cedric had placed me in the first combat qualifier. At noon the next day, I would face 12 ranked students at once. The arena would be flooded. Personal boards and prepared surfaces were forbidden. If I lost, my class would be sealed and my scholarship appeal would end. If I won, I would enter the Academy tournament at rank 16. At the bottom of the order was Benson's sponsor seal. Across the campus, students began taking bets. The odds against me opened at 40-1. By breakfast, the odds had fallen to 35-1. The change offended me. Hugo called it a cruel world while serving oat porridge with butter, honey, apples, and cinnamon. You are about to face 12 people, she said. Try to feel fear before discussing investment strategy. I can do both. I placed the permitted 1 gold bet on myself. Victory would return 35 gold plus my stake. I had 16 gold left. The order banned personal boards and prepared surfaces. It did not ban better chalk. 10 gold purchased 20 sticks of oil core rune chalk. Water could not wash away a finished line for 1 minute. 6 gold remained. The seller wrapped each piece in wax paper and warned me not to eat it. Nico's chalk candy had become too realistic. We returned to the annex workshop. It was still officially my bedroom, but Hugo had removed the weak table and placed 2 stone slabs on wooden supports. Ava had covered the walls with measured grids. The flooded arena had no loose furniture. Its floor contained wide tiles, 4 drainage channels, and 8 stone pillars supporting the spectator barrier. I had already learned that an existing square could close my chalk line. That saved drawing time. It did not explain what happened when a line crossed 2 surfaces. I drew half a rectangle on the floor, then I continued it up the wall and closed it above my head. White light followed the corner. A solid brace appeared between the floor and wall. It occupied the intended angle, anchored itself to both surfaces, and held when I pushed. Ava measured the magical sections. 8 meters. 8 mana, I said, but a freestanding support of the same height would need at least 12. The wall carried part of the load. My magic only supplied the missing structure. The drawing did not need to rest on one flat plane. That meant the arena was not an empty floor. It was a box filled with useful corners. At 10 seconds, the brace vanished. A loose shelf above us dropped. Hugo caught it without looking up from his potato sack. Your research attacks the building more often than the weather does, he said. My maximum mana remained 36. I planned 3 structures requiring 12 mana each. No extra reserve, no 4th attempt. At noon, the flooded arena looked like a shallow lake. Water covered the stone to my ankles. 4 channels crossed the ring. Rain filled the air. Ordinary chalk would vanish before it closed. 3,000 spectators filled the stands. The academy had sold every seat. Students filled the lower rows. Merchants and officials occupied the upper gallery. Benson sat in the sponsor box. Galen's suspension had begun at sunrise. Felix sat in the last student row. He had placed a wooden Felix box over his own head. It was a good disguise until the crowd recognized his shoes. The 12 ranked students entered from the eastern gate. They wore blue combat uniforms and carried wands, swords, and crystal shields. The weakest held rank 70. The strongest held rank 23. They were not friends. Benson had promised each one 5 gold for entering and another 20 for helping seal my class. Some needed tuition money, some wanted rank points. 2 simply disliked me because their younger brothers had purchased Felix boxes. Their reasons were understandable. Their straight-line formation was not. People who fought beside a flooded channel should not stand like bottles on a shelf. Cedric walked onto the judge's platform. He wore black armor without decoration. "This qualifier has been approved under the dangerous class provision," he announced. "If Nico loses, his field architect class will be sealed pending imperial review. If he wins, he advances directly to the final 16. Students shouted from the stands. Some called the match unfair. Others had bet against me and called it educational. Cedric raised one hand. The arena quieted. "Freeform construction magic caused the Eastern Tower collapse 18 years ago," he said. 31 people died, including my brother. I will not allow a similar class to enter this academy without proof that its owner can control it under pressure. That was a motive, not an excuse. I looked at the rain falling between us. Will 12 opponents provide proof? Yes. Then record every second. The 4 crystals above the ring turned toward me. Cedric lowered his hand. The match began. The 12 students attacked together. Fire, wind, stone, and blue force bolts crossed the water. The reflection beneath them doubled the light. The audience leaned forward as if one collective body had taken a breath. I ran toward the nearest pillar. The water pulled at my boots. A force bolt passed my shoulder and broke stone from the wall. A wind blade cut my sleeve. It did not touch skin. I drew upward along the pillar, across its base, and down into the nearest drainage channel. The oil core chalk held beneath the rain. 12 meters closed. My first structure rose. It was a white ramp anchored between the pillar and channel. The main current struck its angled face and turned east. A knee-high stream became a moving wall. It hit the 12 attackers from the side. Their straight formation stopped being a formation. 4 fell at once. 2 slid across the boundary line and lost. 1 held his sword above the water to keep it dry while the rest of him traveled into a judge's table. The crowd erupted. 8 opponents remained. My ramp vanished after 10 seconds, but the current had already done its work. The remaining students spread out. Better. 3 launched spells from the north. 5 came through the water with shields raised. I reached the corner where 2 spectator walls met. My chalk crossed the floor, climbed one wall, passed over an old iron rail, and descended the other. The second 12-meter contour closed. A white corridor appeared around me. It had no front wall and no rear wall. It used the existing stone as both. My magic created only the roof and angled sides. The 3 attacks entered together. Fire struck wind, wind struck stone, and the combined blast left through the opposite end into the 5 charging students. Their shields survived. Their boots did not. All 5 flew backward into the flooded channel. 3 crossed the boundary. 2 landed beside me with smoke rising from their hair. "Still educational?" I asked. 1 surrendered. The other tried to stand, slipped, and surrendered from the water. 2 ranged opponents remained. 1 was the rank 23 student. He had not fired with the others. He had watched my mana use. "You have 12 left," he called. "Correct." 1 drawing. Also correct. He and his partner moved apart. 50 meters of water separated them. No simple cage could hold both. The audience quieted. The betting crystals showed my chance of victory climbing, but the 2 students knew the same limit I did. They began charging large spells. I looked down. The arena drainage channels formed a circle around the center. Cedric had flooded the field through them. 4 old stone bridges crossed the circle, dividing it into sections. Real stone already supplied most of my final object. I only needed the missing braces. I ran to the center and drew 4 short lines across 4 gaps. My chalk climbed the raised stone and returned to the water, closing a figure across several planes. 12 mana left my core. White rails rose from the drainage circle and joined the bridges into one rotating frame. The water struck its angled bars. The entire current turned. Both students fired. The rotating water caught their spells and carried the magic around the circle. A red flame chased a blue spear. The 2 attacks completed 1 full turn and returned to their owners from behind. Both students looked over their shoulders at the same time. Their expressions were almost identical. That was the final thing the recording crystals captured before 2 explosions threw them across the boundary. The bell announced my victory. For 1 second, only rain moved. Then 3,000 people rose, and their roar struck harder than Felix's fireball. Students threw chalk into the air. White pieces fell through the artificial rain like square snow. The betting board changed. My 1 gold stake returned 36 gold. The ranking wall moved my name from 96th to 16th. The field architect class advanced again. My maximum mana rose from 36 to 72. The new half of my core filled with 36 fresh units. I had survived 12 ranked opponents without destroying the arena. I had even redirected their attacks instead of returning my own. The control score appeared above the ring. Perfect. The audience shouted that word until Cedric could no longer pretend not to hear it. Benson stood in the sponsor box. "This proves nothing," he called. The arena was designed to favor him. The crowd turned toward the man whose seal was attached to the flooded arena order. 3,000 faces waited. Benson slowly sat down. Even Felix removed the wooden box long enough to laugh. Cedric entered the arena. Rain ran over his black armor. He looked at the 12 defeated students, the undamaged pillars, and the channels still carrying water. "You pass," he said. "Say the whole result." His eyes narrowed. "Do not confuse victory with authority." Before I could answer, a cracking sound came from the western gallery. Everyone heard it. A white protective line beneath the spectator wall went dark. The stone above it moved. 73 people sat in that section. The first row dropped half a meter. Screams replaced cheering. A support column split from top to bottom. Cedric turned and shouted for the barrier team. Nothing answered. The emergency enchantment had been erased from the foundation. The western gallery began to fall. I had 36 fresh mana, 10 seconds per structure, 3 structures. I ran. The first cross-plane contour closed between the broken column and the arena floor. 12 mana became a white diagonal brace. It caught the lower gallery with a blow that cracked the flooded stone beneath my feet. The audience counted without being asked. 1 second. Students pulled children from the first row. 2 seconds. Teachers carried the injured toward the stairs. At 5, the second column broke. I drew across the wall, over a bench, and down the damaged stair rail. My second 12-meter structure became a wide support arch. Cedric climbed onto the gallery to help. The floor tilted beneath him. He fell. I closed the third figure below him. A white platform caught the head of the combat department and lifted him above the water. He landed on his stomach with both arms around the stone statue of a fish. Every recording crystal turned toward him. The gallery was collapsing, but 3,000 people still found enough breath to laugh. Cedric looked at the fish, then at the crystals. "Continue the evacuation," he ordered. His voice remained dignified. His position did not. My first brace vanished at 10 seconds. I redrew its short closing line and paid another 12 mana from the emergency reservoir built into the judge's platform. Cedric released the reservoir without argument. We repeated the cycle. 10 seconds became 20, 20 became 30. At 40 seconds, the last of the 73 spectators reached safe stone. The gallery fell into the flooded ring behind them. Nobody died. The arena became silent again. A mother held 2 children against her chest. An old merchant knelt and touched the white dust where my brace had stood. Teachers examined the erased foundation line. The recording crystals showed that the line had gone dark before my match ended. It had not been my magic. It had been the absence of magic. Cedric climbed from the broken platform. Water poured from his armor. The stone fish remained under one arm because its tail had caught in his belt. He walked to the center of the arena carrying it. The crowd waited. Nico's class did not cause the collapse, he announced. He prevented 73 injuries and possible deaths. The dangerous class order is withdrawn. His scholarship is restored in full. He looked at the fish under his arm and finally removed it. His entry into the tournament is approved. The Western stands shouted my name. Cedric had forced me into a 12-against-1 battle to prove I was unsafe. I had saved his audience and caught him on a temporary table in front of every witness. Benson left through the sponsor gate. The crowd noticed. The Academy paid 50 gold for the rescue. My bet returned 36. Added to my remaining 6, I owned 92 gold. The scholarship restored my meals and tuition. Cedric assigned me an unused stone workshop beside the North Annex. The door carried a new bronze plate. Field architect Nico. By evening, students had copied the words onto hundreds of pieces of chalk. The ranking board showed me at 16th place. The city paper printed Felix's cage beside Galen's flower-covered face and Cedric holding the stone fish. Beneath all 3 images was one question. What would the chalk boy build next? I disliked the name. Hugo liked it enough to paint it on our soup pot. That night he roasted a whole chicken with garlic, pepper, and green herbs. The skin turned brown and crisp. Juices soaked into thick pieces of potato beneath it. Ava cooked carrots in butter and honey until their edges shone. We tore warm bread by hand and dipped it into the dark gravy. My body ached. My right hand had 2 blisters. The chicken tasted better because I had earned the chair beneath me and knew it would not vanish. Ava placed a folded map beside my plate. I copied it before Roth locked the archive, she said. It showed the academy from above. The central tower, 4 residences, 2 arenas, and the outer walls formed a clear geometric pattern. One section was blank. An entire western wing had been removed from the official plan. The collapsed gallery stands on the edge of that blank area, Ava said. So does the North Annex. I placed my ruler across the map. The buildings aligned like parts of a single closed figure. The campus is a drawing, I said. A very large one. And someone is breaking its lines. The kitchen door opened. Roth stood outside. His black gloves were wet. A roll of old cloth rested beneath his arm. He looked at the copied map, then at Ava. Some plans are restricted for a reason, he said. Hugo placed the carving knife beside his plate. Roth's smile returned. I only came to congratulate our new tournament finalist. He placed a small brass ruler on the table. Symbols had been carved along its edge. Every architect needs accurate tools. He left before I could refuse it. The ruler was cold. When I placed it over the blank section of the map, hidden white lines appeared beneath the paper. They formed half of a circle. Before we could trace the rest, horns sounded at the academy gate. A black carriage entered beneath the imperial flag. 20 armored officials marched beside it. At their head walked a narrow man in a white uniform. A metal glove covered his right hand. Cedric met him in the courtyard. The man's voice carried through an amplification crystal. I am Inspector Malik. By order of the capital, all free-form rune magic belongs to the Imperial Bureau. The carriage door opened behind him. A young swordsman in a plain blue coat stepped out. The rank 1 badge on his chest identified Ezra, the reigning Academy champion. Malik pointed his metal glove at my window. Deliver the field architect before sunrise, he said, or I will close Greystone Academy. Nobody delivered me. At sunrise, almost 4,000 people stood between Malik and the North Annex. They carried chalk. A baker held a board showing Felix in a cage, Galen in flour, and Cedric with his stone fish. A 4th space was reserved for the capital. Malik read the board. Public mockery of an imperial official is punishable by 10 gold, he announced. The baker turned the board around. Malik was already drawn inside a cage. Make it 20, he said. The crowd cheered. Malik did not shout. That made him more dangerous than Galen or Felix. He had brought a prepared law, 20 soldiers, and a glove designed to erase magic. Cedric stood at the academy gate with 6 teachers. "Nico is an enrolled student," he said. "You may inspect his class under academy supervision. You may not take him." Malik opened a silver document. The Imperial Rune Preservation Act gives the Bureau ownership of all unregistered freeform construction magic. That act covers recovered artifacts. Today, it covers him. Every recording crystal in the courtyard turned toward Malik. He noticed and smiled. "History will agree with whoever keeps the recordings." That sentence removed any reason to trust him. I walked through the students. Ava stayed on my right. Hugo followed with a tray of hot bread because he believed official conflict should not delay breakfast. Malik looked at my bronze rank badge. 16th place after 3 days, he said. "Impressive. The Bureau offers 500 gold, a capital residence, and private instruction. Sign this transfer contract." He held out a second paper. 500 gold could have purchased a good house in the city. The students nearest me became quiet. I read the contract. The Bureau would own every object I created. Refusal permitted class extraction. Discussion permitted memory correction. The residence was a locked research wing. "Your house has very strong doors," I said, "for your protection." "From the outside?" Someone laughed. I handed the contract back. "No." Malik raised his metal glove. One of his soldiers placed a slate before me. I drew a closed square. A white wall rose. Malik touched the line with one metal finger. The chalk turned black and vanished. My wall collapsed after 2 seconds. The crowd stopped laughing. "The Bureau has erased rogue runes for 2 centuries, Malik said. "Your trick is not special." He ordered his soldiers to search my workshop and confiscate every piece of chalk. They returned with 43 sticks, 3 rulers, and Hugo's soup pot. "That is not chalk," Hugo said. "It has white marks. Those are letters. It is evidence." Hugo looked at me. "The capital has stolen dinner." That crime united the crowd. Thousands raised their own chalk. Malik could empty my workshop, but not every classroom in Greystone. He changed tactics. "The tournament semifinal will proceed this afternoon," he announced. "If Nico wins under Imperial suppression, the Bureau will delay enforcement until a formal hearing. If he loses, he comes with me." Cedric objected. I accepted. Malik had not offered freedom. He had offered time. I needed time more than pride. Ezra waited beside the black carriage. He wore no gold and carried one plain sword. His rank 1 badge was the only expensive thing on him. "Did you come to collect me too?" I asked. "I came for the tournament," he said. "Malik came because the capital is afraid of you." "Are you afraid?" Ezra considered the question. "I watched your flooded match. I am afraid of standing near drains." He walked toward the arena. I liked him. The semifinal rules gave every competitor 1 hour to prepare. 7 ranked students would enter with me. The last person inside the boundary would advance to face Ezra the next day. Malik supplied the arena. It was a polished circle of black stone without seams, pillars, channels, or useful corners. Imperial suppression dust coated the outer boundary. The 7 other competitors had each received 100 gold from Benson for removing me first. Benson no longer pretended his decisions were academic. I had 92 gold and 72 maximum mana. 4 mana stones cost 60 gold and stored 25 units each. Strong rune chalk cost 10 more. I spent 70 and kept 22. Ava carried the stones back to the workshop. "You are using almost everything on one match again. Money that never enters a plan is only heavy metal." That sounded wise. I practiced while buying the chalk. We had discovered the next step that morning. I drew 2 squares sharing one side. When the final outer corner closed, both became one connected white frame. I expected the system to count 2 figures. It counted 1. We added a 3rd square, then 6 more. The connected grid contained 9 closed spaces, but every line touched the same network. The system treated the whole structure as one figure. It still charged 1 mana for every manifested meter. It still lasted 10 seconds, but it occupied only one of my 3 active slots. A single wall was useful. A connected plan was a battlefield. During the preparation hour, I drew 150 meters of open lines across the polished arena. The 7 competitors watched from their gates. To them, the pattern looked like a broken honeycomb. Every cell shared at least 2 sides with another. I left 1 gap at the center. My 4 mana stones connected to the pattern through short chalk lines. Together with my core, I had 172 units available. The main network would cost 150. 22 remained. Malik sat beside the judges. His metal glove rested on the table. 5,000 filled the stands. City theaters displayed the match through remote crystals. Everyone knew the terms. If I fell, the capital took me. If I stood, Malik waited. The bell rang. All 7 opponents rushed toward me. They had agreed on one strategy: break my central line before I closed it. A stone spear struck the floor. A wind blade followed. I used 6 mana to draw a small shield. It survived the first attack and turned the second aside. 2 swordsmen entered from my left. 3 spellcasters spread to my right. The final pair leaped over the unfinished honeycomb. I retreated toward the center. Malik watched my hand. The nearest swordsman smiled when his boot landed on my open pattern. "It is only chalk," he said. "For another second." I closed the central gap. 150 mana entered the floor. The honeycomb rose. White walls surrounded every fighter. Angled roofs formed above them. Corridors opened, turned, and closed across the arena. In one heartbeat, the empty circle became a fortress with 9 rooms and 12 moving passages. The crowd made no sound at all. They had seen shields and cages. They had never seen a building appear around 8 moving people. One swordsman struck a wall, and a corridor carried him toward the boundary. The other tried to climb, but a tilted roof slid him into the first. The 5 spellcasters fired at white walls. Their attacks traveled through angled passages and entered other cells. Fire met ice, wind met stone. A lightning bolt followed a corridor, turned 3 corners, and returned to the man who had cast it. His hair rose before the rest of him did. The stands found their voices. 5,000 people began counting the 10 seconds. At 3, 2 competitors crossed the boundary. At 5, a third fell through a corridor exit and landed in the judge's water barrel. At 6, Malik moved. His metal glove touched a small control line hidden beneath the judge's table. A black pulse crossed the arena and struck the center of my network. 1 honeycomb wall vanished. The crowd saw it. The recording crystals saw Malik's hand. He expected the whole fortress to fail. Instead, 2 neighboring cells joined. The network remained connected through 4 other paths. It became a larger room. My fortress changed shape but did not collapse. Redundancy was also architecture. At 8 seconds, the enlarged room placed 4 remaining competitors together. They looked at one another, then at the single exit facing the boundary. The floor tilted. All 4 slid out in one pile. The fortress vanished at 10. I stood alone in the black arena. The victory bell rang. 5,000 witnesses did not cheer immediately. They turned toward Malik. The main crystal repeated the moment his glove released the black pulse. It enlarged the image above the arena. His hand became 10 meters tall. Then the crowd began shouting. "Cheater" was the most polite word. Malik rose. Imperial suppression was part of the agreed test. "Not during an active match," Cedric said. He held up the signed rules. The suppression field had been permitted around the boundary, not under the judge's table. Malik reached for the recording control. Ezra stepped between them. "Touch the crystal," Ezra said, "and the capital loses its champion before tomorrow's final." Malik stopped. The audience heard every word. The class rewarded the fortress and public victory. My maximum mana rose from 72 to 160. 88 fresh units filled my core. My rank moved from 16th to 2nd. The semi-final prize was 250 gold. Added to my remaining 22, my purse reached 272. Strength, resources, and status moved together again. Malik still had 20 soldiers. He pointed his metal glove at me. The match delayed enforcement. It did not prevent detention for attacking an Imperial official. "He never touched you," Ava called from the preparation gate. "His illegal structure obstructed my inspection." The soldiers entered the arena. Thousands of students began climbing over the lower rail. Cedric ordered them back. A fight between the Academy and Imperial soldiers would give Malik the excuse he wanted. I still had 104 mana. I drew one continuous rectangle around the judge's platform. Cedric saw the shape and stepped aside. Ezra did the same. Malik tried to erase the first side before I closed the last. Ava threw a piece of chalk from the gate. I caught it and completed the corner. A connected cage rose around Malik and his soldiers. The bars formed small diamonds. Malik erased one with his glove. The surrounding diamonds remained closed and joined across the missing space. He erased a second. The cage redistributed again. Every gap created 2 new braces. Malik began striking faster. The cage changed around him like a net repairing itself. One bar lifted the evidence bag. Hugo's soup pot rolled down the sloping floor and stopped at his boots. He raised it above his head. The arena cheered louder for the pot than for my fortress. Malik's metal glove became trapped between 2 bars. He pulled. His white sleeve tore from shoulder to wrist. The Capitol inspector stood inside a chalk cage wearing half a uniform while 5,000 people watched. The baker in the first row held up his morning board. The empty fourth picture was no longer empty. 20 gold well spent, he shouted. The cage vanished after 10 seconds. Malik stumbled forward. The Bureau had erased magic for 2 centuries, but its inspector had failed to escape Felix's kind of cage. His face remained calm. His ears did not. They were bright red. Cedric ordered the Imperial soldiers out of the arena. Ezra announced that he would refuse the final unless the recording crystals remained under Academy control. City officials backed him because half of Greystone had seen Malik interfere. Malik could seize one student in a silent room. He could not seize me in front of 5,000 witnesses without admitting why the Capitol feared my class. He withdrew to his carriage. Before leaving, he faced me. "Tomorrow, Ezra will cut every line you draw. When you lose, the crowd will deliver you themselves." Ezra stood close enough to hear. "Do not plan my victory for me," he said. The final was confirmed for noon. Public betting opened with Ezra favored 3-1. The number was fair. He had held rank 1 for 2 years and had never lost an Academy match. My new workshop reopened that evening. Students returned the confiscated chalk 1 piece at a time. Somehow we received 61 pieces, although Malik's soldiers had taken 43. Rumors had learned multiplication. Hugo recovered his pot and filled it with chicken noodle soup. The broth was clear and rich. Thick noodles curled around pieces of roasted chicken, carrots, green onion, and soft mushrooms. Ava baked small rolls brushed with butter and salt. Steam escaped when I tore one open. My right hand shook from drawing the fortress. Ava wrapped the blisters with clean cloth. "You caught the Capitol in a cage," she said. "Technically, the cage caught him. Are you ever frightened after something happens?" "Usually while checking the bill." She tied the bandage and kept hold of my hand for 1 quiet second. "I believed you before the first wall," she said. "Why?" "Because after everyone laughed, you looked at the chalk instead of the crowd." The kitchen felt warmer than before. Hugo made a great effort to study the soup pot. I squeezed Ava's fingers once before letting go. Then the brass ruler on the table became cold. Hidden lines appeared across Ava's copied map. The blank western wing filled with a circle. 4 smaller circles joined it beneath the residences. The arenas formed 2 locking bars. The central tower stood at the center. The whole campus was one connected figure. 7 gaps had been erased. We took lanterns into the basement of my workshop. Behind a broken shelf, the wall contained a narrow stair descending beneath the academy. Hugo stayed above to guard the door. Ava and I followed the steps. At the bottom, we found a corridor wide enough for 3 carts. White lines covered its floor, walls, and ceiling. Some were as thick as my arm, others were thin as thread. All continued toward the central tower. They were not painted. They were carved into the stone and filled with something that looked like ancient chalk. One section ended in a fresh black gap. Ava knelt. Fibers clung to the edge. Black cloth. The same material Roth had used beneath our kitchen table. I placed his brass ruler across the gap. The hidden line appeared, trying to continue itself. A pulse moved through the corridor. For one instant, every building above us became visible in my mind. The academy was not built over a magic scheme. The academy was the scheme. The carved lines carried stored mana from thousands of students. If the outer circle closed, the campus could become a fortress. If the 7 gaps remained, something beneath the central tower could rise through them. Another line went dark while we watched. Stone cracked in the distance. Ava caught my arm. Someone is erasing it now. We ran back to the workshop. Roth's archive door stood open across the courtyard. The shelves inside were empty. His maps were gone. On his desk lay one strip of black cloth and a message for me. It said that the final line would disappear when the tournament ended. Below it, Roth had drawn a simple crown. At midnight, the academy shook. The final arena floor lit with half-finished white corridors. My semi-final lines were extending by themselves, searching for the ancient scheme below. I measured the visible pattern. To defeat Ezra, I needed almost 300 meters of connected structure. To repair the campus, I needed enough mana for whatever Roth erased next. I had 160 maximum mana, 272 gold, 1 bandaged hand, and less than 12 hours. For the first time since the blackboard fell, 10 seconds did not feel generous. I spent the last hours before dawn drawing plans. At sunrise, I spent 200 gold on 8 charged mana stones, each stored 25 units. 72 gold remained in my purse. My core and stones held 360 mana for the championship and whatever waited below. That was not enough for mistakes. Ava measured the arena. Hugo sharpened and wrapped my chalk. Nobody slept. By the third bell, 10,000 people filled the stands and 20,000 watched through city crystals. Vendors sold fortress cakes, cardboard cages, and copies of Malik's torn glove. The baker's board showed 4 defeated enemies and 1 empty space for the champion. Ezra hoped the baker would give him better hair. His sword could cut magic across 50 meters. He had won the title twice, and no opponent had touched his coat in 31 matches. He studied my chalk network as I prepared it. I drew 286 meters of connected corridors across the arena. The pattern contained 24 chambers, 6 rotating passages, and 3 outer walls. 1 tiny gap remained near the center. It would consume most of my mana and 5 stones, then last 10 seconds. I had one chance. A fortress, Ezra said. A corridor with confidence. Malik expects me to cut the center. Will you? If it is the right move. That was why he had remained champion. He listened to orders only when they matched the fight. Before the gates closed, Benson threatened to cancel all family funding unless I was transferred to the capital. Felix followed him onto the sponsor platform with Galen's payment ledger. My father purchased Nico's failed examination, he told the main crystal. He also paid the 12 qualifiers and 7 semifinalists. The ledger displayed every payment above the arena, including 40 gold beside Galen's name. Cedric ordered Benson's sponsor seal removed. As workers lowered the huge emblem, its rope slipped and the square gold frame landed around Benson. He could have stepped out. Instead, he stood inside it while 10,000 people chanted Felix's name. The Sun used to justify the fraud had ended it publicly. Smaller sponsors replaced the lost funding and promised 300 gold for the gallery. We are not friends, Felix told me at the gate. We agree. Malik watched from outside the academy boundary. His white sleeve had been repaired. His metal glove had not. A black replacement covered his hand. Roth was nowhere in the stands. The championship bell rang at noon. Ezra drew his sword. I closed the center of my network. 286 mana entered the arena. The fortress rose. White walls climbed around us. Corridors unfolded like the inside of a giant machine. Roofs crossed overhead. The audience vanished behind layers of moving stone-white light. Ezra attacked before the first second ended. His sword drew a blue line through 3 walls. The network redirected. 2 damaged chambers joined and produced one long passage. I moved along it while Ezra cut toward the center. At 2 seconds, a rotating wall tried to carry him east. He drove his sword into the floor and held his ground. At 3, a round shield unfolded from the connected wall behind him. He released his sword, rolled beneath it, and caught the handle before it fell. The audience counted through the walls. At 4, Ezra cut the outer ring. At 5, he found the only safe tile among 6 turning corridors. At 6, his blue line severed half the fortress, but the honeycomb compressed. At 7, he ran sideways along a wall while the floor moved toward the boundary. At 8, he aimed his final cut at the last connected corner. I had 74 mana and 2 active slots. I did not defend it. I drew a closed rectangle beneath his landing point. 36 mana became a narrow white staircase. It rose beneath Ezra's boots. He cut the final corner of the fortress at the same moment. The network began collapsing. 9. Ezra ran down the staircase toward me. He understood that leaving the boundary meant defeat. I spent my last 38 available units on a curved wall behind him. His sword cut the wall. The severed half did not fall toward him. Its curve guided it beneath the staircase. The remaining steps tilted upward. Ezra launched into the air. He crossed the western boundary 1 heartbeat before the fortress vanished. 10. Every white structure disappeared. Ezra landed outside the ring on both feet. His blue coat remained untouched. I stood inside with an empty core and 1 piece of chalk between my fingers. The victory bell sounded. 10,000 people forgot how to breathe. Ezra looked down at the boundary beneath his boots. Then he sheathed his sword and laughed. "A staircase," he said. "You cut everything else." He stepped back into the ring and raised my hand. The sound from the stands became physical. It shook dust from the roof. Every recording crystal flashed white. In the city, bells answered from one district after another. The ranking wall removed Ezra from first place. My name replaced his. Nico, rank 1, Academy Champion. The Field Architect class completed its first advancement. My maximum mana doubled from 160 to 320. The new half of my core filled with fresh power. The championship prize was 1,000 gold. Added to the 72 I had kept, my total became 1,072. 5 days earlier, I had owned 8 copper coins and a cancelled meal card. Now I had power, money, status, and a crowd chanting the name Galen had placed last. Cedric entered with the champion's silver badge. Ava and Hugo waited at the gate. Hugo held the recovered soup pot above his head because it had become a symbol against his will. The warm moment lasted 3 seconds. At the 4th, my network returned without my command. White lines crossed the stands and climbed every campus building. At 5, the central tower answered. At 6, the residences lit. At 7, the western gallery joined a circle. At 8, the ground opened. The arena split through the center. Black air climbed from the gap. It smelled of cold stone and burned metal. Far below, something moved beneath a crown-shaped shadow. The automatic lines did not vanish at 10 seconds. They were drawing power from the campus. Ava unfolded her copied map. 9 gaps burned black across the giant scheme. "Roth erased 2 more," she shouted. "The outer circle is open." The brass ruler in her hand pointed toward the central tower. Malik crossed the academy gate with his soldiers. He no longer pretended to inspect anything. "Secure the central core," he ordered. "Ignore the students." Ezra drew his sword again. Cedric called every teacher to the arena. Panic moved through the stands, but the exits had become white corridors. The academy itself was choosing paths. A wide platform formed from the automatic network. Ava, Ezra, and I stepped onto it, and it carried us toward the central tower. Behind us, teachers guided the crowd through the glowing corridors. Recording crystals followed overhead. The entire city watched. The tower doors stood open. Roth waited inside the central chamber. Ancient lines met beneath his feet. Black cloth wrapped his arms beside a crown-shaped pedestal. "You became champion too quickly," he said. "You erased the gallery." I erased a prison. The gallery stood over a failing line. Cedric knew. The recording crystal carried his words. Roth had been an imperial architect 20 years earlier. The campus drained every student to keep the thing below asleep. His weak daughter had died from that drain, and the Bureau had called her loss acceptable. His grief was real. His solution threatened 30,000 people. What did Malik promise? I asked. When the crown rises, its stored mana returns to the province. No child will be drained again. Malik entered behind us. Do not waste time explaining, he said. Roth looked at him. Tell them. Malik touched the pedestal. Imperial symbols described ownership transfer, not release. The crown controlled a buried weapon. Malik had used Roth's grief to open it. Roth's face emptied. You said the mana would return. It will return to Imperial command. The recording crystal carried that sentence to the arena, the city, and every official observer. Malik finally noticed it. He raised his glove to erase the crystal. Ezra's sword stopped one finger from his wrist. History keeps this recording, Ezra said. Beneath us the crowned shadow rose. The tower floor lifted. Stone cracked around the pedestal. A white hand larger than a house reached through the opening below the arena. It was made from thousands of stolen spell fragments. Faces moved across its surface and vanished. Students in the stands began collapsing as the open scheme pulled mana from them faster. I looked at Ava's map. 9 black gaps. 136 meters of missing line. My advanced core held 160 fresh mana. I had enough. The gaps were spread across the campus, but the central chamber was a control copy. Every outer line existed here at smaller scale. Roth's brass ruler revealed them. An ancient drawing could carry the intent of its first architect. I did not need to create the entire fortress. I only needed to finish it. I crouched beside the first black gap. Malik ordered his soldiers forward. Ezra blocked the doorway. Cedric and 6 teachers reached the chamber behind them. White and blue magic filled the stairs. Roth held a strip of erasing cloth over the second gap. If you close it, the drain continues, he said. Then I will change the drain after everyone survives. The Bureau will never allow it. The Bureau is currently fighting a soup pot in the courtyard. Its authority has limits. For the first time, Roth looked uncertain. I completed the first line. 12 mana left me. One section of the western wall became solid white light. The audience saw it and began counting the gaps aloud through the crystals. 1. I closed the second, then the third. The crowned hand struck the arena, but a glowing resonance moved into its path like part of a shield. 3. Malik broke past Ezra and touched my fourth line with his glove. Black metal erased half of it. Ava threw me another piece of chalk. I caught it and drew 2 parallel paths around the glove. The network remained connected when Malik erased one. 4. The chamber walls unfolded into white corridors. Imperial soldiers found themselves running back toward the door they had entered. 5. Roth lowered his cloth onto the 6th gap. I drew a closed square around his feet. 20 mana raised a white cage. He erased 1 bar. The connected diamonds repaired the space. His black cloth caught on the roof and wrapped around his head. The recording crystal showed the hidden eraser trapped in the same geometry he had spent 20 years destroying. The crowd shouted 6 before I completed the line. Roth stopped fighting. Change the drain, he said through the cloth. Do what I could not. After the floor stops trying to eat us. 7. The buried hand reached the central tower. Ezra cut 2 fingers apart. They joined again from loose spell fragments. Cedric released the Academy's emergency reservoir into the control lines. White fire crossed the chamber. 8. Malik climbed onto the crown pedestal. His glove connected to it. The crowned shadow turned toward him. Obey Imperial command, he shouted. The weapon obeyed the crown, not the uniform. The pedestal rose beneath Malik and launched him through the open tower doors. A white corridor caught him outside, carried him across the courtyard, and dropped him into the sponsor fountain. The baker's board received its final picture. I reached the 9th and last gap. The missing line required 18 mana. I had 22 left. The crowned hand closed around the central tower. 9! Thousands of students shouted as I drew the final stroke. The campus scheme closed. Greystone Academy became real in a way ordinary buildings were not. Every wall brightened. Every tower joined the connected figure. corridors rotated, residences locked into the outer circle. The two arenas became giant bars across the buried crown. One connected fortress covered the entire campus. It lasted 10 seconds. 1 second forced the crowned hand beneath the arena. 2 closed the broken earth. 3 restored the western foundation. 4 trapped every loose spell fragment inside the central circle. At 5, the weapon screamed without sound. At 6, students stopped losing mana. At 7, the crown pedestal cracked. At 8, Malik's black glove broke in the fountain. At 9, the buried shadow vanished. At 10, the campus returned to stone. Nothing fell. No student remained trapped. The academy stood. Silence covered Greystone. Then every bell in the city rang. The recording crystals showed the sealed arena, Roth inside his cage, and Malik sitting in the sponsor fountain with a broken glove on his lap. The cheers lasted for 11 minutes. Cedric arrested Roth and Malik under Academy emergency law. Roth surrendered his maps and gave Ava the locations of every modified drain. Ezra delivered the crystal recording to the city council before the bureau could touch it. Galen lost his examination license. Benson lost his sponsor seat. Felix kept last place, but students stopped laughing when he entered a room. He had paid for one honest act with his inheritance. Greystone made me its champion and guardian architect. My scholarship became permanent. The Stone Workshop and North Annex were placed under my protection. That evening, Hugo prepared a feast in the courtyard. He roasted beef with garlic, pepper, and rosemary until the outside formed a dark crust and the center remained soft. Ava mashed potatoes with butter and warm cream. Sweet onions cooked beside the meat until they turned brown. Fresh bread covered 2 tables. The baker brought apple pies filled with cinnamon, and we ate them warm with cold cream. Students sat on the grass. Teachers carried bowls. Cedric arrived without armor and placed the stone fish beside Hugo's soup pot. Ezra ate 3 pieces of pie and denied the third when asked. Ava and I sat on the annex steps. 5 days, she said. It felt longer. You went from last place to champion. The bet is still bad. Some problems require a second arc. She leaned against my shoulder. I held her hand while the courtyard lights came on. She had seen the shield everyone else dismissed. She had returned the first piece of chalk. No ranking wall could measure that. For several quiet minutes, I had food, a home, and people whose chairs did not vanish. Then Roth's brass ruler lit inside Ava's map case. We opened the map on the steps. Greystone shone as one complete white circle. 6 more circles appeared across the empire. All 6 contained moving black gaps. Malik had not been the only inspector. Roth had not been the only eraser. The Imperial Bureau was opening ancient Academy schemes one by one. A message appeared along the edge of the map. The capital ordered me to surrender the field architect class within 30 days. Refusal would make Greystone an enemy of the Empire. Ava read it twice. What will you do? I looked at the students eating beneath the repaired roof, at Hugo defending the last apple pie, at Cedric arguing with a stone fish, at Felix quietly placing 1 gold coin into the gallery repair box, at Ezra testing whether a fork could cut pie as well as a sword. Then I picked up a fresh piece of chalk. If the Empire wanted to erase the world, I would have to draw faster.